Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our October 18th Budget and Facilities Committee meeting. We have a very packed agenda this morning, so we're going to jump right into it. First thing we're going to cover this morning is an update on our bond construction. We're then going to speak about the flood insurance that we had spoken about at our previous meeting. We're then going to debrief regarding the building tours that the community took in the last 2 weeks. We're then going to review the board adopted budget calendar, followed by the internal budget calendar, talking about how we're going to use our time to prepare for the budget. We're then going to talk about the calendar for this meeting, for this committee, followed by an update on transportation, and then a review of the district financial forecasting. And we're then going to jump right into community comments. So we're going to try to cover this meeting. I know it's a lot, but we are going to try to get it done in the 60 to 90 minutes that we have allocated this morning. So I'm going to hand the meeting over to you, Kathy, to go right into item 1, the bond update.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Smith. So as many community members may know, we have a very big bond that we've been working on. The bond is originally $69 million, 877. This was voted on by the voters in January of 2015, and construction began in June of 2016. So that's quite a while ago. And we thought it would be beneficial for just to give a brief overview of where we've been, where we are, and what's still left to be accomplished. So now I'm going to turn it over to Justin Daddio. He's the project manager from School Construction Corporation. And he and Jessica and Jim have put together a presentation to walk us through that. Justin.
Thank you, Kathy. Good morning, everyone. How are you this morning? I'm going ahead and going to share my screen so we can see the PowerPoint. Okay, morning. Okay. So what I'd like to do is just bring a little update of where we're at with the bond, and we're going to go school by school, talk a little bit about what's completed, what's ongoing, and what's upcoming for each building. So we're going to start off with the high school. One of the first projects we started with was a renovation of about 6 science rooms. We also renovated the auditorium, the girls' locker and team locker rooms, as well as 2 new turf multi-sport athletic fields, new windows and a couple of exterior doors at the high school, as well as a new security vestibule. These are some pictures of some of the completed work, the science classrooms, the auditorium seating, the fields, and the windows. Currently at Schreiber, we're working on the 7 faculty and student bathrooms. We're in the punch list phase of that work, just tidying up some loose ends, as well as the cafeteria renovations. It was a new serving line, new air conditioning for the cafeteria, and as well as some new lighting and drop ceilings in 2nd floor classrooms. We're currently working on 2 additions at the high school. One is a expansion of the cafeteria to allow for some additional seating, as well as a stairwell that will allow the commons area to connect directly to the cafeteria. We're also working on a technology and industrial arts addition, and as well as a new front plaza entryway with a handicap ramp and pavers and seating areas for the students. I've got some photos of the work that's been completed. These are some of the bathroom renovations that were done. The next photos are going to show some of the cafeteria and the serving line renovations that were completed. And the last photos at the high school, these are going to show some of the cafeteria HVAC work. And then the last photos are going to show some of the drop ceilings and what's upcoming in terms of the front plaza and the technology addition. Over at Weber, we've completed science room renovations, about the same number of classrooms, 8 to 9, I believe. The auditorium was done at Weber as well as the boys and girls and teen locker rooms. We had added a music suite addition this past year, redid the front and rear parking lots, as well as created a new security vestibule, and the Whitney Field and press box was also tied in with the Weber school projects. Below are some of the pictures for the completed work. We have some of the locker rooms, the field, addition, and auditorium, and science classrooms. We're currently working on the completing the cupola, which actually just got wrapped up a few weeks ago. The existing windows are getting replaced with new double hung windows, as well as some new exterior doors, and the restoration of the top portion of the existing chimney, as well as some new masonry pointing was done this past summer as well. What's left at Weber is some interior door replacements, mostly in the Flower Hill section, and some electrical upgrades as well. Over at Daly Elementary School, we renovated the cafeteria. We pulled that out a little earlier based on need and added air conditioning to the cafeteria as well. We're currently working on a new 6-classroom pre-K center, main office, and nurses space. The addition is also going to contain a 2nd floor classroom, a new elevator. We're also going to renovate the existing main offices and nurses' offices once the space is freed up and the addition is complete, and create them into new OTPT small group spaces and STEAM rooms. There's some photos, excuse me, of the work that was being done at Daly. Now at Manor Haven, we've completed the same addition. We've done a classroom addition, including a multi-purpose and STEAM room. We've done a new section of the roof and added a new security vestibule as well. Some photos of the work. Remaining at Manor Haven is the air conditioning for the cafeteria and some bathroom renovations. Over at Guggenheim, the new classroom addition was basically a little bit bigger than Manor Haven. Had the classrooms, the STEAM addition, and a multi-purpose room as well. We also redid the vestibule to make it a new security vestibule, as well as some corridor and classroom ceilings. And we renovated the 2 main office bathroom and bathrooms as well. Remaining at Guggenheim is some HVAC upgrades, which is basically improving some of the fresh air exchanges in some specific spaces. In Sousa, we've completed the security vestibule, as well as some new ceilings in the classrooms, both on the 1st and 2nd floor. Upcoming at Sousa is going to be a new classroom and STEAM addition. We're going to also renovate the auditorium and replace a bunch of existing doors. There's more HVAC work consisting of fresh air and relief air, as well as some upgrades to the electrical distribution panels. And as part of the auditorium renovation, we're going to be adding air conditioning to that. This is probably the next project on tap. We actually have a meeting on Friday with the principal and the design team to begin the drawings. Over at South Salem, we completed the security vestibule, as well as a new parking lot and striping over this past summer. Upcoming for Salem will be another addition of a classroom space and STEAM room, as well as some HVAC upgrades, which will consist of the same thing, exhaust and relief air upgrades, as well as air conditioning to the cafeteria AC. At the administration building, we were able to replace some of the doors, the front door entries and the windows. And we were also able to include the parking lot renovation with this past summer work at the high school. District-wide, we installed security cameras, both inside and outside at specific locations on the building, as well as lockdown buttons and strobes as part of a district-wide security program. That project has basically been completed as well. That's basically it. We're about, I'd say, a little bit under 3/4 of the way through on the bond. And at this point, we're under budget overall with the project that we've completed and are in progress with. Okay. Any specific questions for me?
Julie, go
Yes.
ahead.
Thank you, Justin, for that very thorough presentation. And we did see a lot of that also on the facility tours. So this was also nice to marry those two together. I'm curious for the upcoming timeframe for the working on sections.
Mhm.
Do you have a calendar projecting out when you think those next levels of work? I know you said that the auditorium and air conditioning at Sousa is next on your list, but do you know for the remaining projects, or at least what your end target date is to complete by? And I know that you're dealing with SED and other things, but do you have a targeted goal?
Yeah, the target end date is 2023, the end of the calendar year. The breaking it back a little further, Sousa, if we start to work on the design, and most likely they'll incorporate everything at Sousa in one package, possibly bring in other buildings like the air conditioning and package them all together to make the pricing a little more competitive. But if Sousa goes for the meeting this Friday, we most likely would have drawings ready, and I don't want to speak for the architect, probably early in the calendar year of 2022 to, go up to SED for review. So we would probably look at starting Sousa next summer of 2022, and then following that up with Salem after that. The design for Salem would probably start the fall of 2022 or into the summer of 22, in that time range.
Sure. Question, and this is just because I might not, I'm sure there's a reason why, but why can't these multiple design projects happen simultaneously? Like why do they happen, I guess, one by one?
Yeah, parts of it has to do with, I believe, the amount that could be spent per year. If I recall, there was a limit based on the borrowing. We couldn't exceed a certain number. I believe it was I think around 10 million per calendar year in terms of where the borrowing was. So that would probably the main factor of why we couldn't package too much together.
I see. Okay, and it wouldn't help you to pull the design forward a little bit of the remaining projects?
We've talked about that, and that's probably the first step on Friday, combining different things, given the construction environment and price increases that would make it most advantageous for the district. We're in the preliminary discussions beginning, I guess, on Friday with the design team.
Thank you. Okay, since we have you here, I see actually Ms. Bays has a question, and then I'm actually going to open up to any of the other board members while we're on this topic before we let you go, Justin.
Sure.
Go ahead, Emily.
Thank you. Thank you, Justin. That was very comprehensive. And I do echo what Julie said. We did see a lot of the fruit of your labor, or everyone's labor, when we did the tours, and it was nice to see it all. And it all looks really, really good. With regard to Schreiber, do we have a schedule for when we think it'll be completed? I know that I know there's a lot of work that is going on right now, and just curious if we know, and if we're on schedule, if you think. I know sometimes it's difficult to say a schedule because things happen, but what do you foresee?
We're on schedule right now. I anticipate the front plaza entryway being wrapped up this spring into the summer, so that everything will be basically back to normal for the start of school next September in 2022.
Great. And can I just also make a request that we put this presentation somewhere on our website under, a bond update, because I think we have recently received questions. As a matter of fact, I recently was asked by the Schreiber Times. They're doing an article about the construction at Schreiber, and some of the students, or it's interesting, probably that whole class of students were not there at Schreiber when the bond was voted on. So they had some questions about, what's going on. So if we could just have that accessible, that would be great.
Yeah, Justin and Jim, if you send it to me, I'll make sure it goes on the website then. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, great. So if nobody else on the committee has any questions, I see we do have a couple of other board members. If you guys have questions only, we'll give you this opportunity. Rachel, Deb, Nan. No. Deb just unmuted. No. Okay, great.
Okay.
All right, moving.
Thank you, everyone.
I'm sorry.
I appreciate your time. Thanks. Have a great day.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, moving right along, and we're going to give the floor back to Jessica again to give us an update on insurance.
Hi, so I'm sorry about the dog in the background. I'm working on the flood insurance for the additional coverage that we're getting. I'm working with our insurance broker that provides us with the cybersecurity insurance. And they've been asking me for a lot of information, loss runs, information on all the buildings. So I've been gathering everything, sending them everything as we get it, and hoping to have everything into them this week that they're asking for. Hopefully they don't ask for more again. And they're going to send it out to a bunch of carriers, and then we'll get a price. So.
Great.
And
Great.
Adam, just to kind of review, that was because of all of the losses we suffered from Hurricane Ida. So we're actually going to be reaching the limit that is set of $1 million. So Jessica is trying to see if we can get another $1 million or even more, like 3 million. So.
Right. And just so everyone understands what's happening, NYSER tops out flood insurance at $1 million per district. And I had asked Kathy to look at the private market to see if there were additional sources that we could find that coverage, because right now we're basically self-insured for any future flood damage for the rest of this calendar year or school year. Yeah. Okay. Any questions on that topic? No. Okay, that sounds great. Thank you, Jessica. Well, I know it's a lot of work, so I appreciate you putting that all together. Next, we wanted to go into a debrief of, excuse me one second, there's about to be an announcement from my Google Home. We wanted to talk about a kind of a debrief of the building tours that we went on 2 weeks ago. I did not have any particular items to talk about on that topic. I know Julie, I think you had some things you wanted to bring up. So if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. Justin's presentation was very thorough, but I know that while I just wanted to take the time to thank Jim and Stephen, who I don't think is on the call today, for taking us through. It was nice to see staff also attend with us, and we had a lot of conversation that did center around, I know, the ever-burning topic of air conditioning. So I don't know what we're doing with this information. I know we just received all the information about the updates that are happening from a bond perspective, but annually as a board, we do attend these facility tours, and we create action lists and punch lists. I think some of the action lists and punch lists that we heard on this were some of the updates to the exterior facilities at Weber for the track. We talked about air conditioning, but really it was a showcase of all of the bond improvements and updates. I didn't know if anyone else had any other action items that we as a board should be looking at based on those tours, or Jim, if you came out with anything.
Yeah, I just want to add, Julie, that we're starting walkthroughs with John Grillo Architects on the 29th. And that is to get information regarding air conditioning and to pull all the information together in all the buildings to see which direction we have to go. It most likely will not be a standard approach because each building is different. So there's going to be like Salem, for instance, was renovated the most recently out of all the buildings, like full renovation. So that might be handled a little differently when it comes to air conditioning. Some of the other buildings like Guggenheim, Mannahaven, and Sousa would probably be more standardized with that type of approach. But again, he wants to get a good look at the district. He is sort of new here, so we're going to spend a lot of time gathering information in the next weeks, and we will update the board as we go along. Great.
So Kathy, we should make sure that you speak with Jim and get a sense of when we should think about having that on our agenda for this committee, if that's a 2-month or a 3-month item.
Right. And then, Jim, I was hoping you could take people through the use of facilities process, what the proper chain of command is, how all of that works.
Sure. As we all know, we deal with many outside groups, and they all sometimes they want the same thing at the same time, but we try to streamline that process by filling out a permit application, and then we review every one, even though it seems redundant and it seems that there's always, it's the same thing, but it's very important that it gets done this way. The process stays online. So it starts with a application, a request and an application. We go through the insurance. We do this on every time, no matter if it's a repeat every year. We just want to make sure everybody stays current with insurance, the spaces. This year there is a little bit of an issue because we have 2 gyms that are down. So we're getting into the fall season where the groups are starting to come inside, and we're juggling spaces. And to add insult to injury, my assistant that does all this work is out on an injury, a broken shoulder. So we're working through all of these things, and we're trying to make everybody happy as we usually do. And that's the process. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Jim, also, we were using some of the gymnasiums for storage from related to COVID and also because of the hurricane. So
Right.
I think you're looking at moving some of that also to free up some gymnasiums.
Correct. And then in addition to down gyms, right, we have furniture that we're auctioning off, obsolete furniture that we're auctioning off. We were successful at Salem. They should be coming any day now to get rid of that, to pick up those items. Manhaven, again, it's a juggling thing. So we're checking this to see if we need more storage space. If we do, we may have to rent more storage trailers again. So we're at that point, and but we're trying to get everybody in to use the gyms like we usually do. The gyms are on schedule to be the 2 gyms in question. That's Schreiber and Guggenheim. They should be done by the 1st or 2nd week of November. That's the latest schedule I got. And it's because of a supply chain issue with the maple flooring. So, but they secured it, and we're supposed to be receiving it any day now. So that's where we're at. I hope I answered your question, Kathy.
And Kathy, you brought this up, I assume, because I guess the winter sports season is starting, and we have groups looking to use all of those gyms. Correct?
That's correct. We have the PYA is asking to use it. We have also other associations, older community members who would like to use the gymnasiums as well. So Jim goes through this process with all of them.
Well, Jim, good luck in juggling all of that. And I hope you get your gym back very, very soon. Go ahead, Julie.
My question was just, in addition to the gyms that we rent out, the facilities use agreement also applies for all of our fields. Can you just give me an overview of which fields are available for facilities use by the public?
We give out most of the, we let them use most of the fields in the district. Well, Daly is going to be restricted this year because of the staging area for construction. If there's a group that could use the small section that's left, we're going to allow it. Salem is used. Guggenheim is used. They're all used. All of the fields. So they're all by, some have different restrictions than others, but they're all used.
So our turf fields, we also allow for outside organizations to use?
We are, yeah, the Whitney field we've always used for outside groups. It's the upper and lower of the new that's a little, I believe we are a little more restricted than others. But yes.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay, great. That was, I think we covered what we need to on that one. Kathy, let's jump right into item 4 and I guess 5, which is connected, which is talking about our calendar, our board adopted calendar and our internal calendar. I know you had prepared something for us.
Sure. So would you like me to bring up the board adopted calendar again?
Please.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. I'm sorry. Okay. Okay. So as you can see, we have 4 budget work sessions set up.
Kathy, I'm sorry to interrupt.
I don't see the share yet. Yeah.
I don't see your share.
Okay. Hold on. I just had it open. I'm sorry. You know what? I'm going to actually share this. Okay, this is the board adopted budget. So you can see it now. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
So what we've done is we've set up 4 budget work sessions, which is a little different than in the past. I think you had 1 or 2 work sessions. And you can see the vote for the budget is actually on May 17th. So from there, we actually work backwards. There's different dates that are set by regulations from the state. And so the actual budget should be adopted. I believe we're doing it on April 18th, I believe. So, and then does anyone have questions on these different timelines?
Yeah. What is the final state deadline for the board to adopt the budget?
Election and budget. You know, I don't have that in front of me, but I believe it's in April sometimes, because then we have to have the public hearing May 3rd.
Okay, Julie, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I recall in the past, the board would plan to vote on the budget, but we would leave one additional opportunity for a meeting just in case we had to fall back.
Well, last year was my first experience being on the board with this process. Usually it has to deal with timing because there's a 30 and a 45-day schedule before the actual budget vote when you have to have it approved by. And also the timing also applies with when you get your state aid run. So for example, last year, we were playing with the budget vote date for the budget approval date because we didn't have our state aid runs finalized on April 1st, and we were going to approve the budget like on April 4th, and we had to approve it by April 11th at the latest. So we were kind of playing with the timeline there. So a lot of it just has to deal with when you get your state aid runs, in my experience. But this calendar Kathy's laid out is all within the proper dates as far as the state has dictated, and also gives us the appropriate notice periods of time. So hopefully if the state cooperates and gives us our financial runs in a timely fashion, I don't know that there'd be a problem.
No, what I'm bringing up is I just want to make sure that we give ourselves a little bit of wiggle room so that if we're not doing everything on the deadline in case we need to go back and work and come back. So I just want to make sure that we were
right. So Adam, the actual last date is April 25th.
Okay.
It's when it needs to be adopted by, and we have April 12th.
Perfect.
We'll adopt it by.
Perfect. So that gives us 2 weeks roughly if we need to come back and and make a change. Okay.
And Adam.
Yeah,
Adam,
go ahead.
We in the past, I think last year we adopted before April 12th. So that is where you were talking about the wiggle room. So depending on when we have, as Julie said, our state aid numbers, and when we have our, if we have everything done and done all our pre-work, we could potentially adopt it on March 8th. Like we could adopt it earlier. We don't have to adopt it on the 12th, but that is, as Kathy pointed out, April 25th is the last allowable day.
Okay. So it looks like we've built in quite a bit of buffer in here. So that was really my question. And it looks like, you know, we're aiming to be ready a month earlier than we need to be. And that gives us a month if we need to kind of massage anything.
Right.
Yeah.
It gives you about like 2 weeks really, because you need to, by April 25th, it needs to be adopted. So we're looking at the 12th, but from, I guess from March.
From the 8th, really.
Right.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
That looks good. Is this are we gonna put all of this on a calendar somewhere or?
This
are
was
we gonna
adopted
distribute
by the
this?
board
Okay,
at the last board meeting. Yeah.
okay. So
Um,
is this in the minutes or how do we, is this?
It
available,
is in
this
the
document?
minutes.
Okay,
We can have it posted to the website as well so that people are aware of it.
And then what we'll do is, don't, Kathy, I'm sorry to interrupt you. For the budget work sessions also, especially, those are happening as public meetings. So we'll provide the ample notice that we normally do for all of our public meetings and post it on the calendar with that as a topic item.
Right.
perfect.
Okay.
So I think that can bring us right into item 5, which is the internal budget calendar.
Right. Sorry about that. Okay, so this is the internal calendar. So as you can see, in early October, we had the budget set up in Envision. I'm currently putting together guidelines so that I can do training with the budget builders. Then in December, the budget builders are going to submit their preliminary budgets via Envision. And I still have to share this with all of the budget builders as well. I wanted to share this with the Budget and Facilities Committee first to see if you have any suggestions to make it more efficient. But this seems to be a comprehensive calendar. So then in January, we would have meetings. I would have meetings with the budget builders as well as Dr. Hines, I'm sure. We'll have the preliminary budget forecast and budget assumptions to the board by January 28th. And then February is when we'll begin the budget work sessions. So I was proposing to have the high school, middle school, and technology do the first budget work session, then have the elementary school, special ed, and guidance do the second work session. Then on March 1st, that's when the tax levy limit is submitted to OSC and SED. Then on March 8th, we would have the third budget session where we would look at athletics, fine arts, facilities, and transportation. And then on March 28th, we would look at personnel, BOCES, driver's education, and adult ed. And then you would see April 12th is when the budget would be adopted. And if we needed to do anything else and we needed more time, we have the April 25th deadline. And then it just lays out really the rest of the calendar that's according to the state guidelines. So are there any questions or suggestions?
So a question regarding the 4 budget work sessions, how did you pick those topics to lump together?
I really thought the high school and middle school was a good place to start because that is the bulk of our budget. Technology also, and based on these schools being first, usually personnel is done towards the end in BOCES because you'll hear all of the requests and initiatives from the buildings first, and then you could see how other areas need to be adjusted accordingly.
Okay. How do you see this budget process being different than last year with the Envision software? And also with the fact that we probably won't have any update in terms of the strategic plan or the vision and mission. I feel like we're kind of a lot of ways like in a gray area year. It's a little bit like a fuzzy year.
I disagree a tiny bit with that because I think Dr. Hines has been doing quite a bit of work with our administration, and we are forming a good vision and mission. So I do think that this is going to be in line. And the Board of Ed also has been discussing things that are priorities to them as well. So I do think this is going to give us a good focus, and Envision is going to allow for it to be more efficient, really. In the past, Excel spreadsheets were used and then combined, And I think that took a lot of time. And also there was a lot of room for things getting, it was harder to keep everything together. This is going to allow for a streamline of the process. So I really hope, and it's going to provide for the future more analysis of what we've spent in the past and what we're going to spend now.
Got it. Okay, yeah, so actually, Dr. Hines had told us at the previous budget committee meeting that he didn't think that this year's budget was going to be informed by the vision mission, which is why I had made that assumption. So I apologize if that's not the case. What I meant, I guess what really more the crux of my question was, do you see this year's budget process with this new software, like, is this going to help us to get our arms around, the budget in a different way than we were previously with, with Excel? How you were like what are we what do we gain from doing it with Envision?
Right. I think you gain the historical planning process, because moving forward, you will have that each year. And I think you're going to have a streamline. I think also the budget builders are going to have more ownership of the budget process, because they're going to know exactly how the budget was built, because they're going to be part of building it, which in the past, I'm sure they were part of it, but I think they're going to understand better. I would like to provide them with some analysis of their spending trends, but also understand what initiatives they're bringing forward and where we can allocate various funds or reallocate, repurpose kind of.
Great. I'm excited to see what you guys are going to be able to do with that software. So Emily and then Julie, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I actually wanted to point out or answer kind of a little bit, Adam, the difference between the way this year's proposal and the way we've done in the past is that we've never in the past actually had work sessions dedicated to programming and what the school's programming's needs were. And when I say programming, I mean like the needs of the school based on what the curriculum that they're delivering is and what they need. That is a first for us. We always in the past, what has happened is that the superintendent and the assistant superintendent of business would meet or ask the principals for what they want. They would ask them to go through their budget and say, tell us what you need, what you don't need. And then the board would receive information that said, we need the principal at the high school, for instance, needs another social studies teacher. But we never really understood where that was where that kind of fit in the actual overall deliverable program at the high school. So I think this is going to be a much better approach for us, or a different approach. I think it will be much better because it'll allow us to really see what we're putting together budget-wise is really to deliver the education that we're obviously aiming to deliver. That also, I believe, ties into the mission and vision, because as was mentioned before, our administrative teams are already in putting together, based on the district goals that we put together, what needs to be worked on and what needs to be changed at the different levels of each school. So I think it will allow for us to see how the vision and mission and even the beginnings of the strategic plan, because that's all going to be put together at the end of the year. So I think it will ultimately be a better way for us to actually work that way. So I don't know if I made sense, but I think this is great. And thank you, because I also am very excited to see this all work this way.
No, that made a lot of sense, Emily. And that's what I was trying to suss out that answer. So I appreciate it. And
oh, really? And I thought I mumbled. Okay, good.
No. That was the answer I was trying to suss out into the record here. So I think Emily, I'm gonna jump you for Dr. Hines, because I think he wanted to speak on this topic as well.
Yes, and good morning, everyone. Not to belabor this, but this is really incredibly important. Two things I wanted to add. One is I am very excited that we're moving in this direction as far as how we are presenting our budget. This is what I've been used to in the past, in my previous lives. And this is something that I think will totally help the board as far as making very sound decisions, because you'll have more information in front of you with those who are really responsible for their budgets. So this is a really great step. And then, Mrs. Smith, just to answer your initial question, which I appreciate with what Ms. O'Hara said. I think there's a distinction between the district goals, which there are quite a few, and then there is the actual plan that we're looking to create by the end of the year. And so I don't see any significant changes happening for next year because, again, we're still building this as far as what it looks like. But what the vision and mission does, it allows us now to start making decisions that are geared toward what we feel is in the best interest of our students. And that's probably the biggest distinction. But as far as the plan itself, like Emily said, we're looking to have that completed by the end of the year. But the district goals are really driving a lot of our internal decision making when it comes to, future events. So I just want to make that distinction. Thank you.
Julie, did you still have your question?
No, Emily stole my answer. So
She always does that.
She
always
does
does that. Yeah. Okay, great. So Kathy, if you don't mind, I'm actually gonna jump the order of the agenda here because I think that this is a really good segue into item 8, which is this district financial model that we talked about. And I'll just give a little bit of a brief intro of what we're talking about because I think it's very much interconnected into this budget process. As we as a board and you as administrators are, dealing with specific issues and questions that arise that have financial impact, the question came up is, how are we understanding the actual long-term impact of these decisions that we're making? For example, whether it's a transportation or a bargaining unit contract or a capital program, if we make this decision today, what does that mean for, future boards and, future taxpayers and, the future of the school district? So I had reached out to you and asked, about how we are doing those types of evaluations. And what you had told me was you were going to look into it. And I said, you know what, why don't you give me the answer in the Budget and Facilities Committee meeting? So here we are. And, wanted to see if you wanted to report anything on that.
Sure. So the district has a program called Forecast 5, and Jessica has worked with Forecast 5 for like ESSA reporting and various different reporting. They have, I think, about 7 or 8 years of our historical information. They have all the salaries, transportation, they have the state aid that has come in, all the various revenue. So it's a very powerful tool. I don't believe currently the district has like a 5-year forecasting financial plan. We have a capital plan, but not a 5-year financial plan. So that's one of the areas that Jessica has actually contacted Forecast 5 so that we could get training, Jessica and I, and we would make basic assumptions on the different negotiating contracts. We would know which ones we've settled so far, and we can go out 5 years. And we can make certain assumptions on contractual expenditures, revenue as well. And this is valuable because it helps with the current year and then also for the future, but there are so many different variables. So each year it's basically a living document, not just something we should do and put on the shelf. We need to each year update it and have different assumptions because so many different things are going on with the state, with the different retirement systems that can impact your budgets significantly.
And Kathy, am I correct from what you had told me that this software is very capable as it relates to New York school districts, and you're able to model those types of things in and make assumptions about reimbursements and foundation aid and tax caps and all the things that are specific to us?
Yes, and it also looks at your reserves and your use of reserves, and it's kind of a tool so that you're not using up all of your reserves or leaving a hole in the future. In certain years, it's good to use your reserves, but you also need to manage them correctly. So it is a very powerful tool.
Yeah. So how long do you think it will take for you guys to become proficient and actually be able to build a model that we can use in evaluating, upcoming issues that we have?
Sure. I think that probably by January, we should be able to have a good grasp on it. And that will tie in nicely with the budget development also, so that you can consider that as well to the budget that we're proposing.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, to me, this is really a very useful tool that we can use both for the budget development and also for, just ongoing, contract negotiations to
Yes,
really
agreed.
understand what we're deciding and what it means.
Yes, there's also an OSC model that the Forecast 5, I believe, can actually import right into the OSC model. I've worked with that model as well. So, but Forecast 5, they're very helpful. They have consultants that will walk you through the process. They'll help us with what other schools are also projecting. So we're not just kind of on our own making up assumptions.
Right. Great. And we have access to that in our current licensing?
Yes, we
have?
currently
Oh,
do.
fantastic.
There's no additional expenditure that's
Great.
required.
Great. Well, another item on your plate, Jessica. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have anything they wanted to discuss on that topic? Not even Emily? Okay. So let's go back now to item 6, which is the draft calendar for this committee for the remainder of the year. I think Kathy, you also had something.
Yes, just bear with me. I have to I can share my screen. Okay, can everybody see this?
We can.
Okay, so now these dates are just ones I proposed based on the calendar and how different holidays fall. So you can see I picked one for each month. I'm not sure if you all wanted to add things in as we get closer to the budget. And these were just topics that I kind of looked at last year's budget and facilities meetings and different topics that were discussed. And I don't know if it's really just a starting place. So if anybody would like to make changes.
No, my opinion, and then I'll open to others, that this is a very good starting point that kind of gives us the big picture items that we need to talk about at all of these dates. I expect that we're going to be adding, one-off items to each of the meetings, maybe a month or two before. But big picture, I think that this is a reasonable calendar, overall for the year.
Okay.
Like, for example, when Mr. Rostano gives you an update on the timing of the air conditioning conversation, this would be the place, one of these meetings, maybe the December or January meeting, is where, he would make that presentation and other things like that as they come up. But I don't know that we'll be able to capture all of that in advance. Go ahead, Julie.
I agree. This is a great starting point, and there will probably be sub items that we will discuss on it. And so I think this is a great framework. I was just going to point out, and I know Dr. Block isn't here, but he pointed it out. I think that Monday, April 18th is actually the start of our spring recess. So that might be a date that we want to change or look at modifying in April. So I don't know if we want to move it a couple weeks earlier to talk about the revenue side of the budget or not. And when you're talking about revenue side of the budget, did you mean looking at the current budget that we're preparing, or looking at how to have other sources of revenue? I guess that's.
No, when I think of revenue side of the budget, that's your state aid projections, use of different reserves, your tax levy, any kind of income like your adult ed, your driver's education, things like that.
Presumably, Julie, this is where the whole gap conversation will come in, because that's when we're going to have figured out how much revenue we have, I guess.
Well, the gap, I think some of the gap will be before that, actually. You'll know your gap before
we won't
that.
know the revenue, though, right?
But you have so in January or early February is when you get a preliminary
Prelim,
idea
yeah.
of what your state aid run is. And listen, the direction the governor's been going has been so nice, and they have been ahead of schedule in saying that what they're predicting and what they're forecasting. So I'm anticipating this year we'll have our preliminary numbers will not be so preliminary, right?
I hope you're right. I think we all hope you're
I
right.
do too.
Yeah, I'm saying it out loud so it can go into
Yeah.
the earth, into the atmosphere, right? As a good sign. So yeah, I think we'll have a better idea. But either way, April 18th, I'm not planning on being here. I don't know about the rest.
Okay, so do we want to pick a different date now?
Yeah, we
You
should
can go
definitely.
back
I
and,
think we should.
yeah, you want to just do the previous week? Is that any holiday?
I'm just getting my calendar.
Getting the calendar. I don't think it is. The previous week is
It's
right
the 11th.
before we adopt the budget.
Is April 11th? Oh, right.
That would actually probably be a good meeting, because if
Yeah, I
there are
think so, too.
issues, yeah.
So do it on the 11th?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I think that's all going to dovetail with what we're going to be working on at that time.
And then to your point, Adam, if we need to postpone the adoption of the budget for any reason, that would be a time when we would be able to, press pause or do what we need to.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Do we need to do another ARP fund update? Or are we pretty much, is that all settled at this point?
We could probably add that onto the next budget and facilities. As we get closer into the budget, I think that would be a good time to discuss that, because how are we going to sustain, and do we need to sustain certain positions?
Go ahead, Emily.
Yeah, actually, Adam, thank you, because we have said that we need to be assessing how those ARP funds, the money that we've used and the programs that we put into effect. And I think, if I remember correctly, the curriculum committee is also discussing, was doing that. So in my mind, the way that this would work process-wise is that at the curriculum committee meeting, there would be a discussion on the actual programs and how they've been running, and if they've been effective, if there need to be changes, if it needs to be continued, that. And then once that takes place, that then should come to the budget committee. So theoretically, if the discussion said that, okay, we're going to be continuing the programs they were, and we want to, then it should come to the budget committee, because we do have to now plan for it within our budget. Because if we remember, those funds have been given to us from the federal government, but we as a school board need to decide how we're going to plan for them going forward once the money is no longer there. So if we're planning on continuing them, we have to start planning for that, where we're putting that in the budget. So that's where I think, you put it down for November 15th. I'm hoping that that's already taken place. I think, honestly, that's probably a little bit later in the year, because I don't know that we'll have that assessment done by November 15th. So
I think
maybe,
that's right.
right? Maybe it's in February, where we're, I know we're talking about the tax levy in February, but maybe it's in February that we're also talking about how are those programs going. And I see Dr. Hines has his hand up, so he might want to tell us when.
No,
But
you hit the nail right on the head. I mean, I think, November is way too soon. So maybe even January, but January, February, I think would be the right time to do that.
Perfect. And Julie, go ahead.
I was just going to add, I do think at least in the December budget needs and parameters time period, we could potentially discuss some of these things. I mean, Dr. Hines has made a commitment, and the board has made a commitment, at least for the ICT classrooms, which have involved moving students to different schools and establishing them. If that is something that is a priority that's going to be explored by the board, we should be looking at that sooner rather than later as far as funding. So some aspects of those ARP funds that affect our overall operating budget could be examined without such the formalized process, right? Because they are things that we have a commitment to.
But Julie, that's going to be examined, I think, in curriculum committee. I think that's on the agenda. I don't know which week. So how do we dovetail those, I guess we're supposed to be talking about in curriculum at Emily's request,
Right.
kind of a measured outcome discussion of those ICT classrooms, at which point I think that those would just become part of the budget based on what budget the district is presenting. Like, I don't think we need to relitigate it in the budget committee. Is
I
that,
think, I don't know that we need to relitigate it. I think what I'm saying is we've already executed on the ICT classrooms for 3 of our grades, and we're planning to execute on the other 3 moving forward. So I don't know. I mean, I guess it is increasing our operating budget, and it does directly affect the movement of students. So all I was saying is, if this is something we're committed to, maybe not such a formalized process has to go through an evaluation on the curriculum committee side. I don't know if it's on their agenda to look at that specific, those classrooms. It might just be
Can I
something.
make a suggestion? I'm sorry, Julie, but there is a way, we could potentially have a joint budget and curriculum committee meeting, which we've done in the past with other committees to discuss this specifically. So you don't have to necessarily, have separate discussions, but it could be a joint committee meeting.
so Emily, why don't we put that on just a BOE meeting? If that's the case, I think.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It would just
that
get,
could
every-
al- Yeah. Yes, Adam, as we discussed, this could be the
Yeah.
actual work session of the actual BOE. Yes.
that's
yes.
what I'm thinking for that, for things
Yes.
like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a good idea.
Every once in a while.
Once in a while you have one. Okay.
Okay, so let me just get my head back on the agenda here. Draft. Okay, so anybody
Wait.
else have any comments on go ahead, Julie.
The only other comment, I'm sorry, I'm like on the dates. So May 16th is projects for summer work. I'm just pointing out, May 17th is the budget vote. It's the, before election, etc. It's always like a crazy time. It might be nice to just push that last meeting off to the week following, and I know before Kathy, your office is very busy with any budgetary things or whatnot that may arise. So I'm just throwing it out there. I don't know how any other board members feel, but we found ourselves last year in this pickle of a place, and I think we should have changed the date, and we didn't.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
So the weekend after, is that Memorial Day?
I'll look. Really testing my calendar knowledge. The 23rd? No, we're all good.
No,
right,
it's not.
okay.
We could do it. No, the 23rd would be good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, so we are going to jump back to the agenda now. We actually only have one more item, which is the transportation dismissal update under operations. So right back at you, Kathy.
Sure. Okay. So I met with the elementary school principals because that was where the most significant issues were for dismissal process. We went over like a proposed dismissal process where we were going to have, I forget what the name of the student manager asked them. They have the student schedules in there, and then there would be a roster for each bus, and before the student would get onto the bus, their name would be checked off. While that lends itself well to certain buildings, other buildings with a lot more students, or if the bus isn't getting there, all at the same time, it would be too time consuming to actually do that. So one of the things that was suggested, instead of having parents just send in notes, they could have an email that's for dismissal at Guggenheim, dismissal at Daly, which 2 of the schools already do have that. So that was one really good thing that came out of it. Also, having rosters for students that are walkers or doing things after school. That way they know those students are accounted for and that they're in the proper place. And it was good for the principals all to be speaking together to share best practices. So also the Here Comes the Bus app, we've looked into that. We've had Mark Glass, he's one of the technology employees that we have. He's going to be working with all of the principals to make sure that in Aspen, the correct buses and things are there. But it is a 10-week lead time for that. Some of the things to consider too are those students that aren't transported by peers. We have to make sure we have GPS on all of the buses, not just the ones transported by peers. So that's another issue that may be costly. So we're looking into that.
Can I ask why would we need the GPS on all the buses and not
Because
just yours?
that's how the app, that's how you know where your bus is, because the GPS.
I don't know, but what I'm wondering is why would it have to be an all or none thing if it's available from?
Well, that's something we could discuss. I just think that if you have, Pierce does our main contract. For students with special needs, you have other contractors that do that. So I wouldn't want to have certain parents being able to track their students, but other ones not. So I think that would be difficult. The other thing I was also thinking is we do it kind of a beta test with one school to see how it goes before we roll out with all of the schools. So it is going to it is a process that's not going to just happen overnight. I have spoken with other school districts that do this. Herrick's is one of them. There's other schools that are considering it as well, but they've run into a few roadblocks as well. And Herrick's, they said that was one of the huge problems, is also the parents don't all know how to access the technology, where you may have an easy time at it. I may be a little confused by it, and it gets a little frustrating.
So that sounds great regarding what you told us about the dismissal. I don't think we necessarily need to be in the weeds on the specifics of what you all discussed, but it's really refreshing to hear that all the principals spoke and that something is being looked at kind of at the district-wide level, and that you're confident that we won't have the same problems again in the future. Go ahead, Emily. You're muted. You're muted, Emily.
Okay, sorry, it's the iPad technology I'm not used to yet. Thank you for doing this, and thank you for following up, obviously, after we had some concerns about different issues at different schools with regards to transportation. What I would like to ask is, and I know that this is a process, and I know that it's something that can't be done now, immediately, right? And I agree with you. If we're providing tracking for Pierce, we should be providing tracking for all buses. I think it would be inequitable to have some parents being able to find their students if they wanted their children and others not. I think it would create other issues. So I think, doing this process is for long-term is a good idea. My thinking is that we're going to probably have this in place for next September, right? I don't expect us to be able to make these changes immediately. And I think the fact that we're working on it now, it's October, so that we can have it all finalized and be put in place and have all our principals aware of what the changes are, all the staff aware of what, I think this is a process that we don't want to run and rush to fix. So I appreciate that. The question I have is, one of the other things that has been asked in the past is about aids on our buses. We had at one point did you take your hand down, Dr. Hines? Because that was what I was saying. I'm just beating you all to the punch.
You really
now.
are. It's quite extraordinary.
Fire,
Yes.
it's Monday morning. So could you please also provide for us then the costs that it would be to put aids on our buses? And maybe the aids on our buses are not in the for the entire year, but let's say for the beginning couple of, maybe the first couple of months or the first month of school. I think that if again, as we're planning our budgets and as we're going forward into next year, if this is something that we as a board think is worth the investment for our students, then we should know what the costs are and figure out ways in which we can do that. So I just wanted to make that request also as you're looking at transportation to see. The other request that I've heard in the past, and Julie might take her hand down now, is that we used to do staggered kindergarten for the first week in school, or the first few days, where kindergartners rode the buses on their own, and the kindergartners were able to, you know, be on the bus themselves and understand their route, and the bus driver would get to meet the kindergarten students exclusively. We eliminated that years ago because of basically transportation costs. We would have to add more runs to get the kindergartners on their own and whatnot. So again, maybe this is something, as you're planning going forward, let us know what the costs are, and so that we as a board can make a decision on whether or not, you know, we want to put that back in or not, or, you know, we decide what works better or not. So I appreciate the looking forward and trying to fix a problem that we are trying, that came up this year, and I appreciate you looking into this.
All right, thank you. One of the other things I had discussed with our Director of Transportation, there is, for the kindergartners before school starts, she does a little introduction and teaches them about bus safety. Sometimes it's parents are still on vacation, or parents miss it and the student misses it. So one thing I discussed is maybe possibly doing another, like a refresher course once school does start, because that will reiterate to the parents and the students, you know, this is what bus you're on, this is what we do, and this is proper way to exit the bus. Another thing too, the county has just done the stop arm cameras on the buses as well. So that should hopefully in the next month or so be coming out, so that we can actually sign up for that. And when that does happen, I believe that provides GPS on the buses too. So that may help with the here comes the bus issue.
Yeah. And Kathy, regarding the here comes the bus, you know, I don't necessarily, I think we could have further conversations about whether or not we need to wait on all of the buses being equipped before we start the rollout, as long as we know that there's a path to all of the buses getting it.
Right.
So if it's something that you think is going to be ready in 10 weeks, you know, I don't think it's the worst thing to start slowly rolling it out if that's comfortable, so that everything is rock and roll for next September.
Mhm.
You know, I think if we just plan to put it to next September.
Right.
just
That's
gonna
kind
be
of
a lot
why
a lot,
I
yeah.
figured with the beta testing, kind of, if you want to call it a beta test.
I think that would be a very prudent way to do it.
Can I volunteer a school for the beta testing?
Sure.
Never mind, I won't.
I'll just speak with the principals and do it.
I'll keep my mouth closed, I promise.
Okay, should we, I'm going to open up now to any comments from other board members, and then we'll jump right into community comments and hopefully wrap this meeting up very quickly. Who do we have from the rest of, Rachel, Deb, Nan? No? Okay. Rachel, go ahead.
I was just going to say I'm good. Thank you. You're running a great meeting.
Great.
Very thorough.
Okay, so any, Deb?
Agreed. So
Awesome. Okay, anybody in the community? George, Mrs. McLean? No hands raised. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Happy Monday.